Good morning, or good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you may be joining us from today. I am super excited for this episode. I don't think you could have probably three more excited, passionate, talkative people on a visual webinar to talk about a very lovely area of our wonderful education system, which is prep. So we are so lucky today to have our very own head of our prep school at Moulton Hall, Debbie Speakman, and the absolutely wonderful Lilly Dean, who is a fantastic consultant and a great friend of Moulton Hall. So welcome both, and I will hand over to Debbie to introduce herself first of all.
Hi, thank you very much. What a lovely invitation that is, Elise. I'm really excited to be on the webinar. A little bit about myself. I've been in education for 30 years, which is rather a shocking number. For half of my career, I've worked internationally. So I've worked in Africa, Middle East, and South America. And for the majority of the other half of that career, I've run prep schools. So I'm very experienced. What I think is lovely about working at Moulton Hall is that it combines those two passions, really. The ability to run a small, nurturing, enriching prep school, but with very much that global outlook. And to find a school like that in the UK for me was brilliant, really. So to be part of a school that welcomes international students, whether that's for a short stay or for long stay, and often lots of our short stay children are repeat visitors to Moulton and they join our family. That's a really wonderful synergy for me. So I'm really excited to be on the webinar. Elise, do you need any more? Any cabaret dancing or anything like that?
Well, I would like to see the podcast through the medium of dance. That would be lovely, Debbie. So we'll keep that one for the finale, maybe.
Please do.
Okay. Dancing shoes on under that table, I imagine. Okay, right. And it's lovely for me because obviously in my role as admissions director and having been at Moulton for so long with my international head on, we work very closely, Debbie, as well, which is fantastic for that synergy and opportunity for international families. And Lily, over to you.
Right. Thank you, Elise, for the introduction and for inviting me to the webinar today. So hello, everybody. My name is Lilly Jean, and I came to the UK in 2009 and have been living here for 16 years now. And together with my partner, I set up an education consultancy company back in 2016, and it's called Elite Scheme. We specialize in providing comprehensive school consultancy services to families with young children aged 4 to 17. And we are part of the education group UKEC, which has been in the industry for over 25 years now. We have 17 branch offices in the UK, 8 in China, and others in Taiwan, Malaysia, Ireland, and the MENA region. And when working with the independent schools in the UK, both day and boarding, we mainly recruit from the Chinese market, the mainland China market. But it's equally exciting to see that we have families from China, Hong Kong, Macau, Indonesia, South Korea, and Taiwan coming to us for our services.
Fantastic. Wow, so you're very well placed to talk with authority on this topic today, Lily. So I'm going to just throw some stats out there, first of all, on the back of the ISC annual census, just for us to put some context here. So a few points we've been told that obviously there's a decline in pupil numbers. And we're seeing the sharpest decline has been observed in key intake years, such as reception, year 3, year 7. With international pupils, we do still know that there are, over 61,000 of non-British pupils in our schools, with parents overseas. So although we know numbers have fallen since last year, we definitely have families interested in sending their children to UK boarding schools as well. And we know that the boarding number from outside the UK has decreased by about 4.2%. And obviously we've got geopolitical and economic factors, as always, entwined with all of those. But I know that the three of us are always super positive in terms of that glass half full outlook and very passionate about such wonderful educational opportunities that are out there that are still being engaged with families. And I feel it just revolves around that point of getting the right families into the right school and working, with that kind of moral fibre in mind. So if I may begin with you, Lily, what do you think are the crucial factors that international families consider when they're looking at that co-ed prep provision in terms of integrating, supporting the international student?
Well, I think that's a fantastic question. Well, first of all, I truly believe that the prep school plays such a vital role in the children's education journey because they are laying the foundation for the kind of people the young children are grow into. And because of that, in my experience working with the Chinese families, I can say for prep school age, it's rarely just about academics. They are looking for something much more than that. And I think the key questions that the Chinese parents often ask is, will my child feel seen and supported at the school? So being seen, I think, starts with something very simple, like remembering a child's name. Like when I'm taking my client onto a school visit to a prep school, one of my favorite moments is when there are pupils passing by and the staff knows them by name. And not just that, they know what's going on in their lives.
Mhm.
They have a rugby match in the afternoon, they have an English test coming up, or just about asking about how they are feeling that day. And I remember last time when I visited Molten Hall, when Elise took us on a tour, she talked to one of her past students. I think we met in the library and
Yeah.
asked about her GCSE exams, even though you are no longer teaching her. And I think that's what left the impression on me, and that speaks volumes to the Chinese parents too. It's in the small, genuine interactions like this they start to feel my child won't just be one of the many here. They will be seen, they will be valued. And that feeling can be so powerful because this is how you know this is a school where every student is valued as an individual. And I think that's just so important for international families when they are choosing a prep school because these families are investing so much in their children's education. It goes far beyond just the financial,
Yeah.
because many families, when they are considering the prep school, yes, they are high net worth families, but what stands out even more is the level of commitment they are trying to make when those Chinese parents leave their friends and families and support in China and relocate to the UK just because their children are in the prep school here. And I think because of that, they deserve the attention and they deserve the best care of individualization. And I
Mm.
think so that comes to my point that being seen is a very important factor when the international families are choosing a prep school
And
in the
I love that phrase that you're saying there about being seen, because that can be on so many levels, can't it?
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I would really agree, Lily, in that the level of trust required from an international family to our prep school is absolutely enormous. And I need families to feel that they've entrusted that their children to us and that we're going to take absolutely great care of them and that they can be rest assured that we'll be highly responsive, not just to them as a family, but to their child. I think Morton does a brilliant thing in this in terms of, you would have seen Stables, our boarding house. At this age, it's got to be a home from home. And
Yeah.
Stables is a gorgeous, welcoming boarding house that feels like a home scenario. And that high level of responsiveness of staff is really, really important so that our families and our agents feel, regardless of the hour, regardless of the time, you contact us because we essentially have your babies and we're going
Yeah.
to be in contact with you and we're going to support you. And, what a brilliant, yeah, I agree with Elise, to be seen, but the families need to be seen too, don't they? I mean, I know when I've travelled with my sons and we've relocated for work and relocated with schools, that connectedness with a school, it's we are the extra jigsaw piece in your family, and they need to feel that they can trust us and to feel that we're nurturing just like a family. we can achieve fabulous academic results, but my way and my team's way is you can achieve that through nurture and not pressure, and the cultural enriching experiences and the socializing and that home feel, that will really add to everybody feeling that this is a trusted source to have your education. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
I absolutely agree with that. And I think it's often in the small details that you really get that feeling, because you can't really tell that from the videos and the brochures, the fancy stuff, but you really can feel that when you are on the campus, talk to the staff, talk to the people, talk to the parents, and then you get the feel of the school.
Yes.
And I always feel like Morton Hall is a wonderful example of this. As I mentioned to Elise last time, it's just a magical place that once you are there, you just never want to leave. And it's
Yeah.
magical.
Yeah. We are very lucky. It's a very, the atmosphere is tangible in terms of it's very beautiful, but
Yeah.
also there's a warmth to everyone who works here, and it feels to staff for a lot of them it's also their home. Everybody's emotionally very invested.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I would say also that I think the key word that stuck out with me, Lily, when you arrived, as you said, you can just feel the authenticity. It feels really authentic. And that goes back to what you said, that, you can look on glossy websites and we're all going to say that our schools are fantastic, and they all are. But you can't engineer those natural interactions between
No.
staff and staff, between staff and students, and peer on peer as well. And
Mm.
that's why I think it's so important. I know you take a lot of time. I see lovely photos of you of traveling. You're asking people to guess where you're going next. You invest a lot of time yourself, don't you? Actually, really taking the time to go and visit the schools as well, which I
Yeah.
think is so important.
Exactly. And I think building on to that, as I mentioned, I think the second layer for international families is to really have that support from the school. And when I say support, I don't just mean the support for the pupils, and I also mean the support for the parents as a family. And we can start with the pupils. Parents often ask, how does the school support international student academically? Like, for example, every school talk about their EAL support, but do you have a student's success stories that shows how the school has transformed international people with little or no English to a confident communicator? Is it possible for us agent and international families to talk to these pupils and hear their experience during a school visit? I still remember last year when I visited a prep school on an Asian farm trip. There were two international pupils, a Chinese girl and a Japanese boy. They were chosen as the student prefect to talk to us, a group of 20 agents, to share their experience at the school. It was impressive, not because they speak perfect English, but because they were confident, they were articulate, and they were proud to share their stories at the school to a room of strangers, adults, even though they were just in the UK for a year or two. And this is something that's only possible with the support from the school.
Yes.
And they were given the opportunity to take on those leadership roles at the school and to really speak up their mind. And I think that's very important for international pupils.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, one of our little mini success stories that we have is we've got a lovely little Chinese chap in our reception class, and he joined us in September, and his progress has been absolutely phenomenal. So we sit with our children at lunchtime. That's a big part of our pastoral care. Each member of staff will sit on a table with children. So we mimic very much a domestic family setting. And I sat with this little chap last week, and he had a great discussion with me about puddings and how much pudding he would like. And he would like to have an extra one. And afterwards, he was going to play football. But just in that moment, it was quite emotional for us as staff, because we think, what a journey this little chap has been on, from someone who had no language to suddenly now we're discussing the types of pudding he would like. He negotiates a play using language. He's won an award for maths this year that will be awarded in front of the school. And, the it's been exponential. But the younger we get a child, obviously you see greater leaps.
Yeah.
Another good example would be we have one German family that come to us every year, and they've got 3 children. And I was taking a family of prospects around and showing them different parts of the school. And this little girl happened to chat with the family. And it was wonderful because no one would have known that this little girl was with us for maybe half a term, because she looked a fully fledged Morton girl. And I thought, wow, how fantastic is that? And the family asked her, oh, where do you prefer? Do you prefer being at school in Germany, or do you prefer being in school here? I held my breath for a moment because I wasn't quite sure. And she said, it's really hard, but when I come here and I'm with all of my friends, I just love it. And I thought, tick, that's a job done for the team. How wonderful.
Absolutely. And it's that
Amazing story.
language acquisition. And you said, Debbie, mirroring the family sitting around the table. Language is very much mirrored in your native language, isn't it? We don't sit and say to our own children, well, when you've asked for a bowl of grapes, you haven't used this particular,
Yes.
present simple. It's just naturally acquired. And I think those younger children are like little sponges. And the success story that you're talking about of our lovely little reception student, they're able to absorb not just the language of the classroom, but that social language, and to feel a sense of belonging, and to, going back to what Lily said, to be really seen. And actually, I know that when I walk into the prep school, particular student in question, he's just one of the students, and that for me is perfect immersion. It's not an international student and a domestic student. Of course we support him with EAL and everything, but he's one of the gang, he's
Yeah.
one of the team, which is true immersion, isn't it?
Yeah. I think we're able to do that so well here because there's a long history of our school supporting international pupils, and that's not just in our senior school. It's part of our culture. It's embedded here, and it's seen as being an enriching experience, not just for those international students, but for us. So there's a proper cultural exchange. So in a week, we welcome a Chinese group of students, which will be brilliant. They're going to take part in a performance written by our head of drama, which is around a cup of tea, and we're going to finish with an afternoon tea, and they will do that in concert with their English buddies, and that will be lovely. And as that's happening, we will also have a British values and Chinese culture day. That's proper educational cultural exchange. This is not a tokenistic thing that we're doing. This is something that I know our pupils can benefit from. In our little sort of muddy field in Shropshire, we've actually getting quite a cosmopolitan, exciting little vibe going in our prep. So we've had Spanish children, Italian, French, Chinese. That's really rich. And I know that was something that I sought as an international parent coming back to North Wales. I didn't want to lose that cosmopolitan global outlook. And in a nice small way, we get to embed that within our school. So I think that's quite exciting, really, for Shropshire.
That's just also led me on to, I'm interested what Lily's take here is, that maintaining your first language, because of course if you're a student that joins our senior school at, let's say, year 7, you use your native language all the time back home, you're fully absorbed. And like Debbie said, cultural heritage, cultural exchange is so important, and we would never want an international student to lose their identity, because we want to celebrate difference, and diversity is a beautiful thing in the world. So how important is that, Lily, to the families that you represent, so that particularly for prep age children, that they maintain their first language as well as developing into their second or third language?
I think it's quite important for Chinese families, because lots of the Chinese parents I deal with when they send their children to the prep schools here, because the children are still at very young age. So the parents actually quite focused on that, the education about Chinese culture and the Chinese language as well, because they don't really want them to lose that root, if I may say. And I think it can really help them to find their own identity, even though they are in the British schools. So I would say that's actually quite important for Chinese families or any international families.
I think I think that's a very good point, isn't it? We want to enhance a child's identity and not to erode any part of it. We're very lucky in that we've got a great Chinese department here, and next year we're able to expand our curriculum, and all of our junior children will study Chinese, and all of our infant children will have a Chinese club. Where I've had children of different nationalities, we've got a wonderful French girl here whose English is absolutely fabulous now, and her mum raised a couple of years ago. Actually, I'd really like to ensure that her written French was as good as her spoken French. So we arranged for different resources for her to have a little bit more time with a sixth form in the boarding house to actually work on that. There's always ways in small schools like ours that we're great at making bespoke programs to support that child. And I recognise that as a parent, I would also want that. I was thinking, if this is what I would want for my child, then we'll make our team make this happen for your child.
Yeah, I think I can really relate to that and building on what Debbie said. At our company scheme, we actually we regularly run something called the mommy clubs, which is to bring the dads are more than welcome to join as well. But to bring the parents and the pupils together to form a kind of a community so they can connect with each other. And I think
I
that's
love that.
yes,
I
that's
love
quite
that.
brilliant. And
Brilliant
we
idea.
always do like lovely events, like having afternoon tea or making Chinese dumplings, or sometimes doing something with the flowers. So it's always something that's just fun, and then you can communicate and connect with another parent in the UK.
Yeah. I think, Elise, we need to have our own International Morton Mummy Club, and we could
I'm
do
just
it
making
via
a note.
Zoom.
And we've
Just
got
put
that
it
right.
right in the food aspect.
Definitely. And I know that we've had afternoon tea, where we've invited our international families that live nearby. Because as you said, Lily, at the beginning, that, this is a massive investment. Your prized possession is your child, your children. That's the first type of investment. But, the parents generally are here, they move here. Our little boy, is here with some of his family. It's a massive investment on an emotional level, financial level, and a lifestyle level as well. They need to be
Exactly.
immersed into the community. They're like the new student at school, aren't they? That doesn't know anybody, not just they only know a few people, they know nobody at all. So it's so important that they're part of that. And Debbie, I know that we've already touched on some of the ways we celebrate and acknowledge diversity. So I suppose my question on that is, do you really feel that those international students feel valued and respected because of those lovely things that your staff do in the prep school?
Yeah, I think it's important that these things, aren't just words, and they're not just on our website, they're not just in a brochure, but there are things that are tangibly that we can say, no, our children do this and we take part in this. So we work closely with our senior school. We have lovely culture days and culture weeks where our senior students, which is really nice, run workshops for us on different cultures that our children all attend, so their culture can be seen and they can take part. We have Mother Tongue Week, where language is celebrated in different languages. Again, we do that between the senior and the prep. We also take part in, we had some Chinese guests, and our EAL department worked with them to put on a small assembly performance in role play for Chinese New Year to the whole of our prep school. And they led that. I think it's important that they have leadership opportunities to showcase culture, as well as just being receiving and just exchanging, but actually do a bit of leading about that. I often invite children when they're on a short term stay with us. Would you like to take an assembly? Would you like to show us your home? Why don't we do a little presentation? And depending on the age of the child, we can make that very appropriate. So a couple of German girls that we had did a fantastic presentation, and I really felt our children learnt a lot about Germany. When I've had another very small little Chinese boy, not our reception one, I think this little chap was year 1 or year 2, he wanted to celebrate Chinese New Year, but he wanted to do it visually. So he just wore fabulous costumes, and he came in and he showed this in assembly. and our children loved this, and that child felt really, really special that they'd shared something special about their culture with us. So, and I think as this continues to grow in the school, our EAL department and all of our teaching team are constantly looking at ways that we can expand that and enhance that, because we know it's quite special about us. So yes, definitely.
I remember back in the days of COVID, and we had a student with us from China, and he was living very nearby with his mum, and obviously he was still accessing everything online, and he did this most lovely video tutorial on how to make dumplings. And I remember as staff at home were all following along and making the dumplings with him, and when he came back to school we could all share that with him. And just it feels like such a little thing, but it goes such a long way to those international parents.
And Elise and I often talk about when a family wants to join us, that, and I've done this in other organisations, it's really nice if that family want to have a Zoom chat with myself and with Elise prior to joining, to make that little connection before someone gets off a plane. And then that little person has got a hook when they arrive here too. And I think, and they can share something special about home with us, and then I can prepare our staff with that as well. It's all about making that a smooth transition, and then feeling special when you're here, that you've got something special to share with us.
Definitely. And that leads me on nicely to that idea, Lily, of communication. Obviously, you're a great ambassador for your families, and you know the schools and the staff at those schools really well. So you would do a lot of the communicating. But how do you try to encourage also that direct communication between the families and the school? Does that happen, or do they still tend to go through you to the school once the child is in the UK?
Well, I think it mostly depends on the level of English the parents have. If the parents can speak fluent English, then they won't have too much problems communicating with the schools directly. But if the language can really be a barrier for them, then they tend to rely on us because we have a long-term relationship with the parents and we know them for years, so they kind of have that trust in us, and then they tend to rely on us to solve the problem for them. So I guess it really depends on which families we're talking about here. Yeah, but we are actually, as agents, we are trying to encourage our families to be quite proactive in the communications and to really actively engage in the school communities as well. Because as I mentioned, some of the Chinese parents, they are here in the UK, and I really love to see them, actively engage in the school communities and to connect with other parents and with the staff from the school as well, because I feel that can benefit overall well-being and success of the child as well.
Definitely. And I guess culturally, Lily, is that very much something schools need to think about for them to be the ones to open the door? Because I know culturally, having lived in Thailand for so many years, the parents are absolutely lovely, but they would never make that first move because they
I see
worry.
what you mean. Yeah, I see what you mean. I think there might be some culture difference in the communication styles. Um, like, okay, I give you an example. Like, for example, I have more than just one parent coming to me saying, Lily, I just went to the parent meeting. The teachers were lovely, but I have no idea how to get the useful feedback from them because they were all saying very good things about my children. And it's not a complaint, it's
Yeah.
confusion because the parents, when they go to parent meeting in Chinese schools, the teachers tend to be very direct and they focus on the areas of improvement rather than the positive things. And I think, there are language barriers, yes, but there are also cultural barriers which us
Yeah.
agents can help bridge that gap to help the parents to really understand, what does it mean, and what's said between the lines. And I think some of the Chinese parents, they can be like hold themselves a little bit back and being a little bit afraid of asking questions because they don't want to be seen as difficult parents. But we are there to help them to understand they are not being difficult by asking questions. They are just being more engaged.
Yes. That's so
think,
interesting, isn't it, Debbie? That's so
yeah,
interesting.
I really love that. We have in our school what we call our parent rep group, and we have parents that we invite from each year group to come and chat very regularly. I've had a coffee with my group this morning, and I'm very open, and I say to my parent reps, I am a mum, and my son is quite used to going to school and saying to someone, "Did my mum email you? I'm so sorry." And I'm kind of like, I am that mum. You can be that mum. You can be that dad. We know you're invested, and we want to talk to you. We want to have that engagement, and we want to respond. That two-way dialogue is what moves every child along. And I think that culture is really, really helpful, and it's really healthy. So there's a really healthy level of engagement here with our families. And I think we open the door with positivity, and we open the door with events such as come and have afternoon tea with us, come and engage with us. But we're also highly responsive on email. So often Elise and I will joke that you never sleep, but we're very aware that we've got mums and dads who might be far away or might be worried. And if you're worried or you want to ask something, I will answer you. If it's Sunday at 9, if I get a Sunday email at 9 o'clock, then I know I've got a mum or dad who's a bit worried. And if that was me, I'd like to know. So we're quite happy on working with our families at that level of engagement. Really, we recognise it's important to them.
And I think as agent, we really appreciate that the swift response from the schools, because that shows to us that the international families, international students really matter to the school. And I think down to the core, it's all we do all these things from because we have the empathy with the international families, we have the empathy with the international parents. We trying to put ourselves in their shoes and think if we were them, then they would be very anxious and very eager to know the feedback from the school. And that's why we are doing all these things. There's no set formula for it. We just do it because we are empathetic with how the family
Yes.
are feeling and how the children are feeling, and it just become second nature to us of
Yeah.
what to do.
Yeah, exactly. It's you just responding on a very human level. We're not following a policy. We're following, actually, this feels right. We need to
Yeah.
respond. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And it just also made me think there, Lily, about maybe not so much more for prep. I know that as a senior school, parents would expect regular reporting. I know we do report also in prep, but it's interesting you've raised the point there at parents' meeting. They're like, I'm really confused because they're only saying good things. And what do I do with that?
Yeah.
Would the parents expect regular reporting? Do they understand the reports? Because sometimes the language we might use in reports would be absolutely fine for British parents. They could also read between the lines because of the nuances of language without us saying something maybe overcritical. We know the nuance of language, which a second language reader might not get. So, how does it work in the world of reports for Chinese families?
So I think for those pupils who have guardians on top of the parents, they normally have the school report translated. But that can be even more confusing for the parents because you just lose the meaning between the lines. I think most of the parents, they from the school report, they understand what their children have learned during this term, and they understand the areas they have done really well, because I think in the school report mostly you're talking about very positive things. But if you really want to have practical tips about the areas for improvement, then the parents probably need to send follow-up emails to the school, to the subject teachers, to ask more suggestions in details. Yeah, so I think a school report is helpful. But there are some parents, if they really want to know how the pupils can further improve, then they can always send follow-up emails to the school to ask for more details.
Mm.
Yeah.
But thinking also in terms of, for those international parents that do live here, great, we can invite them in. For those that still live
Yeah.
abroad, it's important also to keep, them connected. And I've often thought why don't we do a virtual coffee morning? Let's
Mm.
let's look at time zones. Let's, try to encourage them to come to some of them where we have got a
Yeah.
platform where we try and engage. Do you think that Chinese families, I'm thinking of your lovely kind of like mummy's club and stuff. Do you think that families would want to engage virtually if they're not in the UK?
I think they want to engage, but I also think they will have concerns if they have a limited English because
Yeah,
they will be worried if they are not able to understand what's happening in the webinar or how they communicate with the other parents or the staff from the school. So I am a very strong advocate for schools to extending their pastoral care to these parents as well,
Yeah.
especially the ones in the UK. And I've been thinking, it would be so lovely if the school can provide some EL lessons to the parents to help
yeah,
them to improve their at least the daily language, daily English they can use for like the communications with the teaching staff or with other parents to make the life a little bit easier for them, and
Yeah.
so they can
love that.
integrate better with the school community.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that idea.
Yeah, that's lovely, because then you'd feel like your parents were also on a journey with you. Your child is on a journey, but actually, this cultural experience will also enrich your lives and you will feel on a journey. That's fun.
Exactly, and from my experience dealing with young pupils, I always feel the pupils themselves, the children themselves, can benefit as well if they feel their parents are on this journey,
Yes.
developing themselves, further growing up, as the same as them. So they are going through like similar things. They are in a new environment, and they both need to further develop and further grow. And I always feel then they kind of like bond even better,
Yeah.
and not just like the children are growing, the children are advancing, but the parents are kind of left behind
Mm.
space.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I mean, I'm thinking now of, an EAL lesson about making dumplings. I'm determined to get dumplings involved in this.
Let's do it, Debbie. That's going to be our target for
Yeah,
Start.
what a
That'll be
lovely
so
idea.
lovely. Yeah.
Okay. I've got one final question for both of you, really. You've both had experience of that transition of international students from the lovely warm walls and fun and, really close relationships of knowing that class teacher in a prep school to then going into the big world of senior school. And interested to know from both of you, what are the challenges and what do we do? What can we do on both sides to support the child and the whole family?
Within our prep school, we built it's quite systematic in that we will invite members of our senior school to come in to prep and to do little talks. And they might be about the academic life of the senior school, how that will look, where you can go to help. We also invite our pastoral deputy, and she will come in and talk to us about support networks that you can have. We do a little bit of time within our stables boarding house. We've done a weekly morning in stables so that the children can feel like this would be my new base, about building that familiarity with a new space. So even though we're all on the same site, it will still feel a change and a transition. So building up, meeting key people, having those moments. We make a really good use of our prefects here. Our prefects come in to prep and speak with the children and talk about senior school. So they will already know that they will have almost like big sisters in the senior school who will be there to support them. So I think it's defining those pathways so that children know where they can go to help, and increasing that level of confidence so that actually when we do make that transition, there's a nice little safety net there and little signposts of where to go to get that help.
And Debbie, you have a specific prefect for prep, don't you?
Yes, and I'm working with Kate on what I would like to call the Big Sister project. And I would like each of our prep children to have a big sister in senior school. This is something I've experienced with my own sons when they were at school, that they had a mentor in higher years. And it could be that maybe they have lunch once a term, maybe they help them with their prep, maybe they come and visit them in a lesson. But just to make them feel like, oh, actually, there's someone in the big school and they're looking out for me as well as my teachers. It's really powerful. I mean, as teachers, we like to think we're incredibly important, but actually there's nothing like looking up to an older pupil to give you that guidance and support. It's very powerful. So that's a little project of mine for next year that I'm going to work with Kate.
Fantastic.
Sounds very exciting.
Yeah.
I think I absolutely agree with what Debbie said. Well, I think, regarding senior school, the first challenge is always to find the right school for your children.
Yeah.
And once you've done that, that's probably 50% of the job done already. And then the other 50% would be about the challenge, the jump from the school to the senior. And I think that's both academically and socially, because senior schools can expect so much more from the student, not just in
Yes.
terms of workload, but in how the student learn. There's more independence, more critical thinking, and a higher requirement for language for international peoples. So even if a student is doing really well at a prep school, the step up can feel quite a shock if they are not prepared. And as Debbie mentioned, I know that schools like Molten Hall is doing very well in this area. You are bringing specialist teachers, I think, from the senior school to build those skills in year 7 and 8. And bridging those gaps can really make a huge difference to those pupils.
Yeah. I think, one aspect that we are very good at here is that lots of our senior school teachers teach within our prep school. So there's a great deal of familiarity of teaching styles and learning styles, and that really does help. I think one area is also the amount of prep and the amount of homework that children get, and that does increase. And we took that as feedback from last year, actually, from our year 7 pupils, that, oh gosh, actually, that was really quite demanding. So I think you're right to raise that, Lily, really. And that's something our year 7 teachers are aware of as well, that we will have to, really support them in understanding, yes, it's going to be challenging for you. You are moving up a step, but we're here to help you. We're here to support you as that workload builds for you. So yeah,
Absolutely. Absolutely, I agree with that. And also there's this social transition because many of the prep school feels like very close-knit families, and all
yeah,
of a sudden people find themselves in a much bigger pond, new environment, new routines, new classmates, and it can be quite overwhelming. And I think as us agents, we can play a very important role in preparing the families for this transition to help them to really understand what to expect and how to support their children and when to lean on the school for help. And and I think the prep schools can also prepare the pupils for this journey ahead by building their character at a very early stage. I've seen great examples where prep schools take their boarders to visit senior schools on the weekend, sometimes as formal tours, but sometimes just very casually, like Debbie mentioned, having lunch together or just having a chat or just watching a match together with the current pupils at the senior school. I think these moment of connections can help ease the transition and really to give these young people some expectations of what's coming next at the senior
yeah.
school.
Yeah, no, that's very good. We do something called a big boarding night in, and we do it once a term, and we invite all of our our junior prep school to board. But that is an opportunity to be with our older pupils and to mix very readily, because you're quite right, where they become top of the tree in the prep school, and they're really proud of that. And then all of a sudden, you're kind of like, oh my gosh, there's all these people. So I think exposure to something different socially can only be helpful.
Yeah,
And I think these, sorry, I said it was my last question, but I'm going to ask another last question. Just to hear from you both, what does success look like what does the future look like for prep schools for international students, do we think?
I think you said the really good thing, Lily, about sort of the connecting the families with the right school. There's a correct school for every person, and it's not the same school for every person, is it? So I think that is half the battle, isn't it? I think you have a very good knowledge, Lily. I can see, and I've watched you, traveling around everywhere visiting schools, so you get to know a school inside and out. You get to know their strengths. and then matching people successfully. So I think getting that sort of perfect match in the first instance, getting a highly responsive staff, I think that is really, really important. If families can feel that, you know, the teachers are going to be highly responsive to their child and to them as a family, then that can only be successful, because we can do that on all fronts, academically, emotionally, socially. And because it's not just about academics, this is a huge, massive cultural formative experience, isn't it? So I think there's a lot of ingredients in there, and it's about high levels of communication with all of that team, really.
Absolutely. And I think from my experience, working with the Chinese families and talking to lovely people like you at the British independent schools, I still believe in the prep schools in the UK so much. I think it's the gold stage of the UK education systems, despite what's going on this year. And I think the key, I think this is something that you can't really imitate elsewhere. And I think the key for British prep schools is to tell a story to the families, because that's what the families are really buying into. Because when they are choosing the prep schools, it's unlike the senior school. They don't really focus that much on the liver destinations or on the grades. They are more looking into the potentials. So they are imagining this is the kind of childhood they want their children to have, one that feels safe, happy, and enriching. So I think the prep schools in the UK can really stretch the potentials of a child, can build confidence, and can shape character in a way that it's hard to replicate elsewhere. And that is why I still believe in the prep schools in the UK so much. And an example would be just a few days ago, one of my clients told me the biggest change she's seen in her son since starting prep school in the UK is how curious he's become. And he's interested in so many things, and that could open up so many paths for him in the future. And I think that's exactly it. Isn't that more important in life
Yeah.
than getting an A for an English test?
Yeah, there was something actually. It's, you know, I was listening to a radio program, Radio 4, just I think it was yesterday. It was a psychology program, and it was saying how curiosity trumps everything. That, you know, you can have a child with sort of a modicum of intellect, perhaps an average child, but if they have got a huge drive that is curious and that is facilitated in school, then actually the sky's the limit. And I think you're right. If we've got facilities which are things like theatres, science labs, streams, forest school, 100 acres, then you cannot avoid being curious. It's kind of mandatory, you know. So yeah, I think it's yeah, that's a great idea.
I would say there also that you also can't avoid the joy. You know, you want children to, to have joy in their life. And we know that when children are happy, they're more motivated extrinsically, and they feel safe. And if they feel safe and happy academically, they will reach the potential, go beyond their potential, which makes me think also about our missions and values, about, wanting them to embrace every opportunity. And they're all going to achieve, but like you said, Lily, that barometer of achievement is every individual student's barometer. One might be academically, one might be social integration, but no matter what the barometer, we want them to be really happy and to enjoy their childhood and their experiences as well. So,
If
wow,
I share something super quick with you that I think is quite amusing, is and I've not told Mr. Brewer this yet, so maybe this might
top
be
secrets.
top secret. So bringing the joy into Morton. Tomorrow we have goats in the reception classroom. I've not quite filled in the risk assessment yet, but we've got 2 or 3 goats coming in, and they're going to spread the joy and love before the day starts. And I'm sure there's going to be lots of literacy about how to keep a goat. And I will leave you with that thought.
What a beautiful moment to end on. I can't thank you both enough. What a wonderful, positive exploration. And I know we started off by looking at the stats that we're told, but it's so important to put it out there that there are many international students thriving in a prep environment, and long may that continue, because like you said, Lily, there's nothing that parallels that experience in a UK boarding school. And it's really nice to share that positivity today, that to show that it is still happening, it will continue to happen, and we're all here with our different hats on to support it.
Lovely. Thank you, Elise. Thank
Absolutely
you, Lily.
lovely.
Thank you so
Thank you
much.
so much, Debbie and Elise. Thank
You're
you.
so welcome.